It's Jini Thornton again, and I'm so excited within the Thank Me Later community. The entire month of November, we are focused on estate planning, and you all know our subject matter expert for this month is Tiffany McKenzie.
Hello, hello.
Our estate planning attorney. And Tiffany, I said, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that you were here. I said, let me go ahead, get some free, cheap advice from you right now. Let me take advantage of this. So, husband David has an aunt who had inherited some land out of state. They're from New York, but she inherited some land out of state. Her children don't want it. Her grandchildren don't want it. Okay, I'm like, what is wrong with these people? Yeah. But here we go. Sounds very common, though. These younger people are like, I want to be free.
Exactly.
Don't want to pay the taxes. So anyway, only thing I'm concerned about is her land, I believe, only has her name on it, but the other parcels have multiple family members. And that sounds so complicated to me. I'm like, who's in charge? What happens when one person dies? Who's paying the taxes? So as we're doing our estate planning and making these commitments, and we have these multiple relatives, can you kind of walk us through leaving assets to multiple people, pros and cons of that?
Absolutely, especially when it comes to property. So real property, it gets very, very tangled. It's a tangled web, especially, and we see this quite often when you've got maybe a grandfather or grandmother who has left property to their children. Their children have now deceased, and now their children have children. And now you have maybe 10, 15 people that own one piece of land in a rural county. Nobody wants to pay the taxes, as you said. Nobody actually wants to upkeep the property.
Right.
And it only gets worse and worse and worse. And it gets even more complicated along the way if people are not doing their estate planning. They're not going through probate. And now to even get actual real title and control in your name, you have to go way back generations to probate your grandpa's estate to make sure that you actually have legal title to this property, and you might only have 1/8 of legal title to this property.
When you say that, I just keep thinking that sounds expensive and painful.
It's very painful, very expensive. It gets harder and harder the further back you go because you don't have birth certificates, you don't have death certificates, you don't have all the information you need to even show a chain of title. And it gets really, really tangled. So I tell clients a lot, think about property in particular, real property, how you want to leave it, and think about whether or not you want to just leave it to a class of people like grandchildren or nieces and nephews, because will they get along? Do they all actually want it? Who's going to be in charge of it? Who can use it? You know, and when can they use it? All of those things come up when it comes to real property, when it comes to houses. So speak with your estate planning attorney if you have one. One way that we kind of work around this is maybe putting the property in an entity, and you can name a manager of that entity so that that person knows that they're in charge of making sure that the property taxes are paid for, that the maintenance and the upkeep is handled. Maybe even creating a bank account with that entity that goes along with it that's there to help with property taxes or upkeep. And being very clear as to who is a member of this entity and how do you become a member of this entity. Instead of just having outright distributions, then you have to go through probate every generation through multiple people. So that's a possible solution to that.
So that's what we're supposed to do at Big Mama's house.
There
then.
you go.
Her house needs to go in an entity, people. I mean, that sounds like a great idea, and it sounds so much easier,
it's so much easier. You don't have to go through the probate court for an entity. You can just create an operating agreement. The operating agreement can specifically say how you enter new members, how you get rid of old members, what happens to a member's interest when they die. All of that can be handled in an operating agreement.
I love that. So call to action, people. Make sure you are clear on the assets that your family has. And please, this is the time for you all to have the discussions with your family, because all these baby boomers now who have inherited all this land from their parents and grandparents now, I'm hearing so much about this.
Yes.
Like, what is the plan for your grandmother's land or grandmother's house or whatever you all have? Please sit down as a family, put a plan together. Sounds like they're also going to have have to hire an estate attorney as well.
Yeah, that one gets a little bit more complicated. So I would recommend hiring an attorney to help out with setting up an entity formation and being very clear in that operating agreement, who the manager is, what the rules are, how you can sell assets of the entity. That's another big one that comes up. Maybe one family member wants to sell and the others don't, and who wins, and do you give a right of first refusal to the members of the family on who can actually buy it outright. So a lot of different details can go into this.
Yeah. Sounds like if you have those discussions ahead of time, though, it will make this whole process so much easier.
Absolutely.
All right. Spend some time with your family getting the stuff done. It's the holiday season. Let's go ahead on and make sure we spend some time with our family talking about the important things. Thank you, Tiffany.
Of course.
I appreciate it.